Hi sweet friend, in today's tutorial we'll be painting watermelons, and I have a couple of different versions that I'm going to share with you, but these are all fun and you'll get to see the different approaches and some of the techniques that I use to paint a tasty watermelon slice. A quick reminder, sweet friend, that making art, no matter your skill level or experience, is really good for your mental health because it helps you disconnect from your thoughts by allowing you to focus on what's in front of you. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial and treat it as a way to explore and be playful inside of your sketchbook. Hi sweet friend, in today's watercolor tutorial we'll be painting watermelons. So I want to show you a couple of different ways of how you can approach this. And we'll get started with the most simple of shapes, and I'll show you how I also sketched this out. So it's very similar to this kind of triangle slice, except this particular example has also, you can kind of see a little bit of the side, so it's like has a little bit of an edge to it, which is essentially like a parallel line. So if you kind of ignore this, so we'll just be painting this triangle part. So I already have a shape here, but I'm going to show you. So it really is a shape, like a triangular shape with a rounded edge. And I do want to show a little bit of an edge here, but you know, instead of having it parallel, so you have two options. You could either have a parallel line or have it slightly slanted, like I do here. Because, you know, watermelon slices come, you know, in different shapes. So, and then at the bottom here, you want to do like a slight curve and then just show a little bit more of the rind on this side. So roughly, you know, have a little bit of a shape here, but it's essentially a triangular shape. And I want to show you two different ways. So the first one I will do wet on wet, and the second one I'll do wet on dry. And I'm gonna use, let's see, I have size number 8, but I think I'll move to size number 6 because my shapes are fairly small and I want to make sure I have plenty of room. So let's see. Wet on wet means we're adding a little bit of water to our paper. So I am only gonna add water to, so I'm gonna leave like a blank space at the bottom so I can have that white part between you know, the flesh of the watermelon and the rind. So I'm gonna paint this whole area with water. And you'll notice, so if I tilt my paper a little bit, you can see a nice glisten. So that's kind of like when you know that this is a good amount of water. If it's dripping, if you have like little puddles, I would just go over with your brush and like lift off some of that water so that you have a little bit more control. Obviously, whenever we're painting with wet on wet, we have less control. So just something to keep in mind, but it is a fun technique. Let's see, I'm gonna mix in a couple of reds, some opera pink, a little bit of orange, a little bit of magenta, just to kind of get like a nice watermelon color. And I got it on my brush. And I'm just gonna drop it along the edge here. Going to extend it. And let's see, I'm gonna maybe drop a little bit more on. So my light source is gonna come from this side, which means that I'm gonna add more color on the opposite side. And I do wanna make sure this edge is visible. So I'm just kind of outlining it with a little bit more color and dropping more paint towards the bottom here. Let's see, I'm gonna clean off my brush and lift off just a little bit so that I have a nice little highlight on the left side, since that's where my light source is coming from. Let's see, I think it's pretty happy with how this turned out. So I'm gonna grab a little bit of green, and now I'm gonna paint the rind. So add a little bit of more of a brush stroke here at the bottom. Let's see, one thing you could do here, if you grab a darker green, you could also drop it in just a little bit, kind of like add some variation in the greens at the bottom, which will look really nice. Now another fun part that you could do here, it's going to be a little bit tricky to control, but I'm switching to a slightly larger brush, and I wet it with water, and I'm just gonna go and basically go right along the edge and lift off. So essentially I wanted to soften this transition. You see that it ran into the green, but that's okay. I can always kind of lift it off a couple more times. So this look gives it a more kind of like playful watercolory painterly look, because we're introducing that little bit of water, so it's spreading out just a little bit. And if your highlight disappears, remember you can clean off your brush and reinforce it a couple more times. There we go. So this is wet on wet. And then the next one is going to be, it's going to be wet on dry. Again, I'm gonna grab some color here, and I'm just going to paint this. So I didn't add any water first. And I'm just filling in the shape. And let's see, I think I'll make my highlight on the side again as well. So I'm gonna lift off a little bit of the color here. So basically, one thing to remember, you know, when you're, if you want more control, you want to do it wet on dry. So a lot of the times when I'm painting food illustrations especially, I need more control because I'm trying to show details. So I will just paint it on dry paper. But otherwise, I like to experiment and see what it looks like on wet. Now, another thing I want to show you here, and I think I'm going to switch to a larger brush, number 16. This is really fun too. So I'm going to wet my brush, and since we're doing this wet on wet, I'm just going to go right along the edge. And this gives it like a really cool watercolory effect. Now it is going to be, you know, tricky to control because the paint will spread out, and mine, especially right now, is almost dry, so it didn't bleed out too much. But let me show you, like if you add more color here, it will definitely spread out and bleed out, but it could be a really fun kind of playful effect. And you can always, you know, use a larger brush to kind of reinforce these lines a little bit. But let's see at the bottom here too, so that it matches. So it looks like a really kind of playful watermelon wet on wet technique. Okay, for this next slice, we're gonna do kind of like a watermelon wedge, And I want to show you how I kind of get this type of texture here. So let's see, I'm going to sketch out essentially like an oval shape. So if you just slightly pretend like you're doing half of an, not an oval, half of an oval shape. And then here to the side, we want to add a slight curve so that you can just kind of see a little bit of the wedge. And actually, I think I might just adjust this a little bit, make it a little bit more opened up. And here at the top, we can do a kind of like a line, but just give it a little bit of a wave so that you know, you can see some of that watermelon texture. So that's pretty much it for the shape. You know, we have like half of an oval and a bit of a wedge here, so it's another curve. And then we don't want to see the curve go all the way around just because we're looking at it from just a bit of an angle. Okay, so for this watermelon, I will do it on wet, so I'm gonna add some water first. And I'm trying to be conscious so I'm not painting all the way to the line. So I got here a nice glisten. Now I'm gonna grab a mix of magenta, opera pink, some reds, a touch of orange, and just gonna start dropping that in. And I might drop in a little bit more orange just to kind of give it a variety of color. And maybe a touch more red and magenta towards the bottom here. And then I'm going to clean off my brush, and I want to lift off just like a little bit of the color. And notice I'm wiping my brush on my paper towel, and I'm pressing down on the brush like horizontally, so kind of like in a fast motion. Because then, and you could also turn it around and do it like this. So kind of like we want to lift off with very quick brush marks, which is what gives us that watermelon texture. And then if we grab a little bit of magenta, which is a much, you know, darker color, we can drop that in, kind of like making some little quick brush marks that represent the seed. Maybe a touch more red here, kind of like this. And then if it's a little too much, you can always lift off. And I'm kind of trying to lift off the area just next to the darker area just to kind of give it more of a contrast, and that creates a nice texture to the watermelon slice. All right, and a little bit of green for this rind portion. And maybe a touch more of a darker green here too, just to kind of give it more of an interesting rind situation. Let's see. That's pretty much it. I mean, you could always, you know, it's really nice to have some lights and darks in whatever it is that you're painting. So I'm just lifting off a little bit of the paint from the top. You could just lift it off from one side depending on your, the light source that you decided upon, but it's totally up to you. And once this dries, you can totally add the little seeds with black paint, but otherwise you could just leave it like this, how I did it in my example, where this is just like implied seeds, or maybe this is a seedless watermelon, which is totally a thing. So anything is possible here. So yeah, enjoy this watermelon slice. And since we're already here painting watermelons, I wanted to do a half of a watermelon shape. So this is gonna be kind of circular, not a perfect circle, so don't overthink it. I'm giving mine like a little tiny dip in the line here at the top. And then, see, I'm gonna drop in some orange, some reds, some opera pink, and maybe kind of lift off part of it so that I have a little bit of a highlight. And then I'm gonna grab some green and just gonna go around this line. And you can also drop in some darker green, kind of have little lines to show the rind. Oh, and see, I'm gonna switch to a smaller brush and grab a little bit more red, and I can also do here the little marks to indicate my placement for the seeds. So kind of something like this, very rough, but you notice that it's really nice to have a little bit of a highlight, so you have that contrast. You can always also lift off some of these lines as well, kind of give it more of an interesting look. So yeah, very simple little watermelon. If you enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified whenever I share new watercolor videos. See you soon.